So, you haven't seen Mando Season 1 in a while. Yeah, I know, you remember a lot of the things that happened, and you're excited for Mando Season 3, because in 2023, February, we're just a month away. I mean, Mando's about to be back. All that classic Star Wars fun that has been the face of the franchise since 2019 is about to come back in full force, bigger and better than ever. And all of that is true. But how does season 1 of The Mandalorian stand today? Does it still have the big impact that we felt 3+ years ago? I don't know, but I'm going to give you a bit of a recap and some of my retrospective thoughts on how the first season panned out and what it suggests about the people and the creators involved in it. And of course, for all you Grogu slash Baby Yoda fans out there, I will put my favorite cute Grogu moment in every episode of this first season. So don't you worry, that's my promise to you. So, Chapter 1, The Mandalorian. One, I really do enjoy that the show has decided to go with chapters in the titles. It's kind of like how episodes for the Star Wars films always make them feel like something grand or something richer. So, for a small screen format, I think chapters works quite well. Overall, I think this first episode is quite good, but there are some things that come down to Dave Filoni's inexperience at live action at this point in time. This was an episode written by Jon Favreau, one of the 6 that he did in this 8-episode season. And this is one of the 2 episodes that Filoni directed in this first season. And honestly, it's probably the better one of the 2 that he did, but I'll get into that later. Overall, I think this episode still is really great. I think the man with no name-esque scene at the beginning is amazing. And then there's the moments on the icy plains with the Mithril guy and the Landspeeder guy just talking and kind of going on endlessly and telegraphing that whole scene that drops it down and made me worried back in 2019 and still doesn't sit in 2023 for me. And then the carbonite freezing onwards, this episode is just chef's kiss. It's so good. But I think more than anything for me, it's really the music that was shocking and shockingly good. Look, we're used to the John Williams classic score in all the Star Wars films, and a lot of the spin-offs and the TV shows have really imitated that stuff. Sure, they've also done their own sort of thing, but I don't think anyone was expecting live-action Star Wars TV to not have classical Star Wars music. But instead, we got like some very electronic, very different cultural music from Ludwig Göransson. Some very electro-based music, especially in this first episode, that I thought didn't work for a second. And then when I let it wash over me, wow, it was really good. And especially with that title card sound. I mean, incredible stuff there. I love the everyman quality of the Mandalorian. He is really skilled. He is really powerful. But he is, he's just a dude. Like in his own Mandalorian enclave, he's still pushed around by some people. In the Bounty Hunters Guild, he gets scammed out with the clients. Yeah, he can trash talk the stormtroopers because they're part of the remnant, but they're not exactly afraid of him either. So that's different from a lot of the other Star Wars things that we've gotten, at least at this point in 2019. So that was very cool for me. I think Navarro is very original trilogy remixed. I mean, we get a lot of scenes, a lot of iconography that fits quite well. I mean, the cantina looks incredible. And I think it's better than Arvala 7, where we had the Kuzak and the Landspeeder, and that just felt straight out of A New Hope, and a little bit too much of a copy there. And this everyman quality really comes to a head at the very last sequence where he teams up with IG-11 and helps take down the encampment of guys. He's pinned down quite frequently. He has to take a lot of risks. He gets shot by it in his armor quite a few times. It was very cool to see a guy kind of stumbling around in Star Wars and still manage to overcome it. So I really enjoyed that as well. I think the character designs and set design, all of it is very fantastic. It's obviously just a few years after the original trilogy, so it feels like some things have moved a little forward, some things are still the same, some things are new. I like that all quite a bit. I think some sets were a little bit better, like the cantina versus the icy plains, where it felt like the volume was kind of just being stretched a little bit. But I think the one big weakness that I get from this episode is in a lot of the dialogue heavy scenes. And I think that's where Filoni's inexperience with live action really shows. The Mithril character, the blue alien guy, and the land speeder guy, they're just exposition dumps and telegraphing every scene that they're in. And Mando doesn't talk too much in this first episode. And honestly, that's great. But everyone else around him runs their mouth. They're not reacting to him. They're just saying things again and again and again. So you lose a little bit of like the oomph of a lot of the scenes when they do actually play out in pretty explosive ways. Like that scene where the Razor Crest are trying to fly off and that alien creature is biting on it and the Mando does come and electrocute it. But we already knew that this was going to happen. So overall, I really like this premiere episode. I love the stuff with the characters. I love the little teases at the world building we got. I love the effects. The music was sensational. So different, but so cool. But I think the dialogue struggled a little bit for me. But the ending shot with the acid, what this whole episode, what this whole series is about, I mean, man, in 2019, seeing a baby Yoda was shocking to me. I mean, the implications, what could really happen? There was no way that this baby was going to be just a regular baby. It was going to have some force sensitivity or something. But then it begs some questions. Why is it 50 and still an infant? What's going on? Was this baby alive during Order 66? All these questions exploded. And that really wasn't the focus of this first episode. That was just the final tease. And once that happened, I mean, I was hooked for sure. Chapter 2, The Child, still to this day is one of my favorite episodes of The Mandalorian. As much as I like the premiere episode of The Mandalorian, even today, I think there's still bits that just don't sit right with me. And I think, again, it does come down to quite a bit of the dialogue. But the second episode, fantastic. I loved it so much. And even today, there's just something so beautiful about it. It was directed by Rick Famuyiwa and written by Jon Favreau as well. But wow, what an episode. Sure, not a lot of big things happen in this episode. Some very interesting things happen. But for the first 3 episodes and their overarching story, we're only making an incremental step forward. The baby has been recovered. The asset has been recovered. Mando gets jumped by Trandoshans. The ship gets taken apart by Jawas. He tries to run after them, kills and vaporizes so many before he's finally shoved off the sandcrawler. And then the guy, Queel, who helped him out in the first episode, tells him, hey, you're going to have to do something for them. You got to barter. I'll help you out. And it turns out he's got to go hunt down this mudhorn creature. And, I mean, that sequence is really great. Don't get me wrong. I loved seeing a Mandalorian really showcase the honor, the dedication to warfare, dying a good warrior's death. All that was really cool. And then we got our confirmation that Baby Yoda, Grogu, could use the Force. And that was so cool for me that we could see that mystery not be dragged out for too long. Because I think a lot of TV shows these days do tend to think that that gimmick works for a lot of people. No, fans are smarter these days more than ever. And just getting past that in that first full episode was a great smart choice. But really, why I love this episode more so than anything with the plot is the fact that we had these tender moments, right? I still love that shot of Grogu just, looking at Din as he's repairing his armor, dealing with the cut on his arm. He's trying to go up to him and heal him at this point. And again, this was not introduced right away. So maybe we kind of understood it. Not everyone had to pick up on it. Maybe he's just reaching out to him. That's what I interpreted it as first. But, it was weird just seeing this guy who we saw be a cold-blooded killer, man dedicated to his missions, and he's got to be gentle with this thing now. And he has been vouching for it the moment that he took down the IG-11. It was all very cool for me. I don't know. There's just a quality to this episode that I absolutely loved. I also love the repairs on the Razor Crest with Queel's help. I love his lines, like I have spoken on all that over this first 2 episodes. So many cool memes from these two. And then he makes his way back to Navarro. And I also want to mention that I think Rick overall has elevated every script that he's been given, even the weakest ones. So it makes a lot of sense for why he's now an executive producer on Mando Season 3. And I really, really enjoyed it. This was the episode that made The Mandalorian for me. Chapter 3, The Sin, is a pretty interesting title to me because I think The Mandalorian ultimately is doing the right thing, but in the context that he lives in the world that he occupies, he has done something that people around him would call bad, a sin. And this episode, directed by Deborah Chow, is so strong. Again, it's written by Jon Favreau, but we get to see all the tender moments in the second episode really start to build up on this psyche of the Mandalorian. You know, he goes to Navarro, he delivers the asset, and he starts questioning it. This is like a change. He's been spurred into action. And yeah, sure, he walks away at first. He's got that Camptona of all that Beskar that gets made into this really cool and sick armor. But he gets another mission, he gets about to leave, and then he's reminded of that little ball that the child was playing with, that Grogu was playing with, and he realizes, no, I can't let this kid just be an unknown to me. Something's going to happen to him. That there's so many hunters who are on this mission. He's so valuable for some reason, and I feel the need to protect him now. Yeah, it's such a good episode. I love the sequences of him, you know, seeing that cradle in the trash can, setting up the bombs, going through, taking out all the remnant stormtroopers, threatening Pershing, and then disappearing, kind of like how he does in that first episode. Just suddenly he's just not there. Yeah, I mean, so cool. And then seeing that shot of like all the fobs, all the tracking fobs in the cantina just start blinking, and even Grief Kargas. I was like, wow, okay, things have gone really south. The guy above the client is desperate for this child now. This is a different level than we expected. Imperials being involved is already taking the story to another level. A kid being the Yoda species another level. Now what's going on? There has to be some plans for this guy with this scientist and all that. It was escalation over escalation, and yeah, I mean, absolutely loved it. I love also the whistling birds just used in action. That was such a cool new thing with the Mandalorians. It's not really an episode that really pushes a lot of what the plot's going on here. We already kind of know after his moments with Grogu that he's going to save him, and it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, but it's how far he goes, how many people he vaporizes and kills, how he's just going to go down with a fight because he needs to take care of this kid for some reason that even he doesn't fully understand. That makes it so cool. And then seeing the Mandalorians fly in, saying this is the way, helping him out, letting him escape. I really love Deborah Chow's direction in this entirety of the episode. I think it's almost flawless, and I can see why this episode alone convinced Lucasfilm to give her the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. But I think that might have been a little too much for her to handle entirely. Now, I understand that the Mandalorian series is mostly episodic, even if it does have a lot of serialized elements. But I think a few other directors working alongside her as she still took on the showrunner responsibilities would have been better overall. She could have still directed a couple episodes because if they're anything close to what she did here in the third chapter, she would have knocked out Obi-Wan Kenobi to a different stratosphere. Instead, we got a really strong show that has some pretty obvious flaws. But again, Liam and I have already told you guys so much about why we love that show. I don't want to dive deeper into that. We have our reviews for that. I just think that maybe she was ready for showrunner responsibilities, but she needed some help with other people involved, just like here in Mando Season 1, to direct a couple of other episodes. Overall, I do think that you need to watch all these 3 episodes kind of back to back to back. They tell their own story, they're very connected. It is serialized for these 3 episodes. The episodic nature of the series as a whole really starts happening after here. And I don't know. I think for the most part, when you look at these 3 episodes together, they serve as an origin story. How these 2 characters, Grogu and Din, first came together and became father and son. And it's very strong on its own. I think it's when we reach the next 3 episodes, those ones do not stand as well today, even with some additions built off of these episodes. So let's move on to the more episodic episodes that I'm just going to kind of run through because honestly, they're not that big. Chapter 4, Sanctuary, was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard and written by Jon Favreau. Bryce Dallas Howard is known for her time as an actress in the Jurassic World series, and her father is very famously tied to Lucasfilm. He's directed Solo Star Wars Story, he's directed Willow, he was in American Graffiti as an actor for George Lucas, so he's been involved and she's been involved with this Lucasfilm family since essentially the inception. And here was her first real swing at directing, and much like Jon Favreau, where he changed his career from an actor to a writer, director himself, she took a really big step here. It's a very simple story, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of it is very much Seven Samurai inspired. Star Wars has already done that in the Clone Wars. We've already seen that in so many Westerns. It's a great format of storytelling, but it's not necessarily complicated now with how many iterations have come out. And I think that worked to both the show's advantage and to Bryce's advantage. I think the setting is also really wonderful. I think Sorgan with the krill farmers, the beauty of the landscape, and the fact that these guys, Grogu and Mando, have to get away to the middle of nowhere, lay low for a little bit. It's a great setting and it makes sense for the serialized aspects of the story. The repercussions of all the crazy stuff that happened in the first 3 chapters, yeah, this is an episode that builds off of it, even if it's in a very calm, not grand overall story way. So I appreciated that. I like Cara Dune. I don't think Gina Carano's performance was ever amazing for me, but her physicality was there. I think she has good chemistry with Mando. It's where she's been forced to, really push her emotions in this episode. And it's not that often, but I think she does feel a little bit stilted. But I still liked her as a character. I still like Cara Dune. And in 2023, we know that Gina's not part of Star Wars anymore. It sucks because I still did want her character around, even with a recast or whatnot. Because I think there's some really cool potential to really explore more of that New Republic stuff. So maybe she is recast for season 3. But yeah, I mean, she was a fun character in 2019. I don't think she was super standout or anything, but I also don't think many characters were in this first season besides Mando and Grogu. Overall, I really enjoyed a lot of the action. Like I've mentioned here, the physicality of Cara Dune's great and Mando's great. I love the meme of Baby Yoda Grogu sipping this broth soup, this bone broth soup. It was so good. It was so hilarious. I saw so many memes. I also really did appreciate that the ATST, which was intimidating in Return of the Jedi, became like ferocious for these guys that have no technology, who live a very austere, simple life. I like that Mando, with all the changes happening to him, for a second there hesitated about maybe that he should also give up this life and be with that beautiful widow. But, he's still dedicated to the creed, the way, and he chooses not to. It's a pretty self-contained story until the very end, and we get the serialization kicked back in once more with that bounty hunter being killed by Kara, who was about to shoot Grogu, forcing Din and Grogu to leave and not have that simple life that the Mandalorian had planned for Grogu to have after being left behind. Yeah, it's a good episode. I think it also does, in hindsight, establish that Din, even if he really cared for the little guy, he just wanted to make sure he was safe and away from being like a tool, an asset for someone else. He wasn't necessarily ready to be a father. So this episode, if you're going to look at the serialization of it, did push him to become a bit more of a father figure instead of just like a foster parent before the time is right. But yeah, I mean, the action was great. I love the trench warfare. I love the Clantuinians, just the camping destroyed by Kara and Mando working together. Very fun, and really established Bryce to be a force to be reckoned with in Star Wars and eventually in live action. So I definitely do really look forward to her career blossoming and becoming something incredible, even more than it already is. Chapter 5, The Gunslinger. Filoni did so well in that first episode for me, even with some of the small tidbits here and there. But this episode, directed and written by him, I did not like this at all. It is the dud back in 2019. It has aged a little bit better because of what's been built off of it. But man, when I was watching this, I felt a lot of my hype from that very beginning just plummet even faster again. Because seeing this in 2019, seeing that opening sequence of the dogfight in space, the mix of the cockpit scenes, of the physical model miniature being moved around, the trash talk, the banter with the pilot saying, "I can bring you in warm or cold," and Mando deciding to reverse on him, clip his ship and say, "That's my line," and shoot him down, and then drift towards Tatooine of all places, right? There's so many things that have happened, so many characters that have originated here. I was expecting Filoni to do some really huge world building, story building stuff for the Mandalorian, but especially for the New Republic and the Outer Rim. And it just became sort of a best hits with a really poor character in Taro Calican. I do not like him. He is the worst part of the episode. Fennec Shan is pretty cool, but she's limited. Ming Na Wen doesn't really get much to do there until the after credits scene. I guess it's technically not after credits. Amy Sedaris is great. I think she plays a very crazed and kooky character in a very fun way. I know some people find her annoying, but I love her moments with Grogu, and I love her dynamic with the pit droids. She just feels like a normal person who's been stuck on this planet for so long and all these crazy things happening that she is the Tatooine definition of normal in some ways. I like saying Mos Eisley Cantina. I liked the iconography of the original trilogy being reshaped, but it was reshaped for nothing. It was reshaped for some silly bounty because Mando needed money to take some repairs on his ship. And yeah, it wasn't fun. I mean, there was some decent action with Taro Calican and the speeder bikes and taking down Fennec. I do say that his moment where he turns on Fennec after she gives him advice is pretty solid, but it's still an okay episode. It's just it started off so strong, and it's just I don't really care much for it. It is pretty forgettable. Even on this rewatch, I was like, sure, whatever. It's only better because Boba Fett was confirmed to be in that sequence. We got to see him in season 2, and he got his own TV show dealing with the fallout of a lot of this stuff. But it's just, I don't know. If there is an episode to skip in this first season, it would be this one. Chapter 6, The Prisoner, is another episode directed by Rick Famuyiwa, and it's written by him and Christopher Yost, who did some work on Star Wars Rebels. I don't know, it's an episode that I still struggle to have a very strong opinion on. It's fun to watch, and there are details there with the storytelling that kind of explain how the New Republic is operating, some of the things that the New Republic is doing, but I don't know if it's anything to really care too much about. I liked Sanctuary because we do still deal with immediate repercussions of the first 3 episodes. Chapter 5, I don't really care much about. Chapter 6, I don't know, it doesn't really lead into anything. It is another episodic episode that you could honestly skip, and you wouldn't really be missing anything here. But that's not to say it's not good old fun. It is a great heist mission. Mando needs to take a job for money, of course, and he goes to an old accomplice when he was younger named Rand, who can't go on missions anymore, but he's got a trigger man, a point man in Miggs Mayfield, who's played by Bill Burr. And Bill Burr is an amazing, hilarious comedian. He's done some acting roles too. He was just not a guy that I expected to be in Star Wars. He himself said he didn't think he'd be in Star Wars or didn't like Star Wars that much. And that was also the reason why Favreau wanted to hire him. And, he's pretty good. He brings a space Bostonian to Star Wars, and that was fun. I like the crew. We got Deveronian Bird. We got Zero the droid, building up a little bit more how Mando hates droids there. We got Shan, who's possibly an old fling of Mando. It's an interesting crew. And Mando's only allowed back in here because his ship is off of both New Republic and Imperial records. And they have to take down and release a prisoner from a New Republic transport. That's basically the whole episode. You go there, he gets the mission, he's the ship guy, and he helps them out, take down all the security droids and whatever, which look like some repurposed K2 droids with some New Republic tech, so I really did appreciate that detail. I love Matt Lanter being the guy, the voice of Anakin, being the one human on the ship and bringing in all the X-Wings because it is a security transport. It's also an episode that I think at its strongest points, it does do a little bit of things here and there that elevate the script, some of its details, some of its direction. But I also do believe that it gives us a look into how the Mandalorian was just a dude who was obsessed with fighting and killing. Like there was something about him when he was younger that, this was the only thing that could get him through the day, just doing these crazy missions with these crazy people, with this very scum and villainy that defines a lot of Star Wars. So yeah, it's a fun episode. I don't think it's anything outstanding. You could honestly skip it. I am happy though that Bill Burr became a recurrent character. Hopefully we get to see him again very soon. But yeah, again, it's fine. Chapter 7, The Reckoning, is another episode directed by Deborah Chow and written by Jon Favreau, and it's the first of the finale two-parter. You really cannot see these episodes as episodic. They are back to the fully serialized storytelling. I think it is a very good episode. It does get us back on track with the overall story. It does build massively on the scope of what the stories be told here in The Mandalorian in this entire time period. I really enjoy it. I mean, we get to see at the end of episode 3, Grief Karga is not actually dead because that Beskar was in his pocket. And I like that he brings in Mando. He's like, look, I know my guys have been coming out there to try and kill you. Let's make this simple for ourselves. This client that has been charging me to track you down, he's been kind of ruining my life here. Why don't you come? We'll both trick him, take him down, and your life is simple, and that kid's life is simple too. It's obviously a bit of a trap, but I mean, it's still enough of a reason, and it's probably the only good opportunity that Mando has, not being part of the guild, wearing that shiny armor and whatnot. I don't think his reasoning's entirely sound, but he still goes with it, and I can't fault him there. It is a bit of a team-up gathering the crew episode. I like that Quill is brought back in. I like that IG-11 is brought back in as a nursery droid to take care of everyone. I definitely do like Kara being back because he needs some muscle. I mean, the whole gang's back together. What more could you ask? I do also like some of the tension between these characters. Mando is doing good things with good people, but they're all complicated, right? Quill's whole backstory is that he was part of the Empire as a slave. Kara has done things past her time as a drop trooper for the New Republic that would get her a sentence with the New Republic. IG-11 basically tried to kill Grogu and feeds into the distrust that Din has for any droids. Because we've seen in the flashbacks as a kid where his parents and so many others were killed by separatist battle droids, and it only feeds into his whole distrust. And yeah, I mean, this is not the ideal crew, but these are the only people since he's left the guild's good graces that could help him out, that have helped him out. So I like the tension between Quill and Kara. I do like that Grogu almost chokes Kara too. It's like, wow, this kid is so defensive of this guy already, and that bond has become something more. And look, there is quite a bit of corporate synergy in this episode too. This episode came out the same week as The Rise of Skywalker, so you have Grogu healing Grief Karga's arm after it's clawed up by those creatures that attacked him at nighttime. And then you have Ben Solo and Rey healing each other during wounds that would have killed each other, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. I like that there's a little bit of marketing for people to come watch this episode of The Mandalorian as it's finishing up its first season because it can tie into The Rise of Skywalker. I do remember hearing that stuff. I find it ironic in 2023 now that when people think of Force Heal, well, yeah, it is a bigger part of The Rise of Skywalker and more people probably have seen it. It's got way more impact in The Mandalorian than it does in the Skywalker saga at this point. So that's a pretty interesting note right now. I do like Carl Weathers' performance as Grief Karga here. He's big. He's got a largeness to him that I really enjoy in the first 3 episodes. But it's here where he's backstabbing Din and then backstabbing his own guys, double crossing them because he originally wanted to kill Din and take that child away. And then because he was healed, he becomes better. He's not good. I won't ever say he's good, but he's very self-interested. But I like how he's in a way like an anti-hero ally. I really did appreciate that. I appreciate that other people are affected by Grogu in the story more so than just good people or traditionally good people. I think overall that the fact that we could see him grow as a character was something that really appealed to me. But really, the biggest thing for me in this episode is Ma freaking Gideon. Giancarlo Esposito, as many of you guys know, is Gus from the Breaking Bad. I mean, fantastic villain, fantastic actor, and to have him be in The Mandalorian, so cool. And I think he definitely hams it up. He definitely eats it up. He plays a little bit more into the Ian McDiarmid, Palpatine sort of camp, but it's big, it's large, it's fun. I love his speech. It's all there. I love the differentiation between the remnant troopers and his troopers. They're cleaner, they look better, well off. He's got his own cell, right? He's doing things that are larger and out there in the galaxy, right? He's got plans for himself at least. He is the guy on top of the client. And then for him to just contact the client and then just start shooting up, insane, right? Like people have already been double crossing this episode, and then for him to double cross his own guy, yeah, I mean that set the stage. I love the TIE fighter also folding its wings. I wish we could see more landings like that too. I love that the 501st, the people here who do their own cosplay with their own screen accurate stormtrooper armor, got to be involved with this. That's such a cool thing to have the fandom really be a part of. So cool there. Yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed his performance there. I also like everything with IG-11. That distrust, of him, that distrust that Din has of him, and then having Moff Gideon speak his name out and having that full flashback be revealed and how he became a Mandalorian, part of the Death Watch, right? Like, all that was amazing to see. And honestly, the stakes of this episode are really insane because we get to see Queel die, right? Protecting the child, that their plan goes awry. It's unfortunate, really, but it really makes that finale really hit harder. It's sad because we got to see this really kind man from the very beginning gone like that. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's great storytelling at the same time. Chapter 8, the final episode of Season 1, titled Redemption. It's directed by Taika Waititi and written by Jon Favreau. Once again, sensational. There's some really cool Taika stuff here that I enjoy. Some seriousness, but also some of his humor. The humor worked perfectly for Scout Troopers. Like, at this point in time, in 2019, this man had come off of Ragnarok. He had had a great run. He was also promised a Star Wars film after this episode too. So he was on the up and up. Right now, in a post-Thor Love and Thunder world, he's still a great director. That's the weakest film that he's done in a while, and it's still decent. I'm not really sure the status of his film, but most Star Wars films that have been greenlit, we don't know what's going on with them right now. They're trying to be really sure before they come back to theaters again. But anyways, if this is his last thing that he does in Star Wars, it was great. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the finale. I really appreciated the development of Gideon just being this totally ruthless villain. When Grief is like, what assurances can you give us? He's like, none. You guys came out and started fighting me and got pushed back in, right? How can I trust you guys? You lied to me about where the child is and all this and that, right? I mean, great stuff there. The action sequences with Mando. I love the smartness of the character of Gideon. He shoots the E-Web's battery pack and basically kills Din Djarin here. He's barely pulled out of it. Grogu using the Force once more to save his father and his friends, and I mean, there's so many cool things just built off of everything that we've seen so far throughout the season. Really strong stuff here. I definitely also like that, along with the purpose that he's been given by the armor, we get to finally see Mandalorian unmasked on a technicality by IG-11, who does take care of him, who does heal him enough that he make it to the lava flats, and there he has to sacrifice himself because they're planning to escape. Of course, Gideon knew and was already prepared for that. It's a pretty poetic way to end. I like that Din's gone over his prejudice fully, and he's like, "No, you can't do this." So he's like, "No, my primary objective is to take care of the child. This is the only way." I like that. It was a touching moment between these two guys who just started off both as gunslingers, and now they're like, "No, come on, we're friends. We can do this. We can do this together, back to back." Yeah, I like that. Another tie-in, a little bow tie on top moment there. It's a great sacrifice. There are rumors of him being resurrected in some way for Mando Season 3, IG-11, so very curious. I hope not, because I do enjoy what he means to the people of Navarro and what he meant for this crew here. I mean, non-stop action throughout this episode, purpose being reshaped and reformed, redemption really for a lot of these characters, doing the right thing, working for the right thing. And then we get to see the freaking Mando jetpack sequence against a TIE fighter. Of course, a Mandalorian could take down a TIE fighter as long as he has a jetpack. I don't know how his arm didn't get pulled off by the TIE fighter. Well, I'll chalk that up to his armor somehow having some way of alleviating the pressure and the jetpack pushing him or whatnot. But then he gets on top. He leaves the bombs. Gideon crashes to his supposed death. The day is saved. Yeah, I mean, all around a great episode. I will say, once he lands back, it feels like they kind of rushed through, like, man, that's awesome. Oh, but anyway, Kara's going to stay here. I'm like, when did that conversation happen? It's stuff like that is just like, it got wrapped up a little too quickly there. Yeah, and then, I don't know. If that's my only negative I can really think of the episode, that should tell you how strong Mando Season 1 ended. And then seeing Gideon somehow survive, cut through his TIE fighter with the Darksaber, just when we thought the world building of this Mando verse was starting to get somewhere, they just took a huge another leap, and you're like, oh, okay. So that's where the show is going. But overall, a great season. It's a fun rewatch. If you only have time, the first 3 chapters, chapter 4, parts of chapter 6, and the chapter 7 and 8. That's all you really need. And it's definitely always fun to go back to it. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end it here. In a couple weeks, we'll have my Mando Season 2 retrospective plus Mando 2.5. But I'll save that for later. Stay tuned next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can listen to us on audio podcasts. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can find us on our socials. You find us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, sometimes even on Reddit. Yeah, I mean, if you have anything you want to discuss with us, your own thoughts on this first season, how it holds up today, even in the comments, we definitely want to hear from you guys. We definitely love engaging with you guys. And stay tuned for our Wednesday review of the mid-season episodes of Bad Batch Season 2 and the prediction episodes on Friday, as well as Jedi Fallen Order live streams on Friday evenings. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.